How's it going, everyone? This is Jack here with the Commander's Wire, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be going over my mock draft 5.0. Now, before you guys go into the comments and let me know all my picks are not realistic or they're never happening and all this other stuff, I'm going to let you guys know here first that I make these mock drafts days in advance, sometimes weeks in advance. I've said this in almost every mock draft that I have made, so that some of these picks are going to fluctuate. Sometimes the picks I make turn out to be super realistic, and sometimes the picks I make turn out to be not realistic at all. It really depends on how the players perform at like the East-West Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, depending on how they perform in the NFL Combine, right? I make these mock drafts weeks in advance, days in advance. I make them a while before I actually make a video on them, and therefore these guys can move up and down the consensus big board at any point in time. So take all my picks with a grain of salt. If you don't like my picks, just look at this as a player profiles video where I'm going over every player that I think the Commanders have a chance at picking in the NFL draft, as well as maybe even some UDFAs if some players fall out of the draft. Before we get into the mock draft, please go down below, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to know when I post next. I really do appreciate it, and it lets me know that you guys want more Commanders content just like this. And without a further ado, let's get right into the video. So the Commanders are sitting here at round 1, pick 7, and they may have not been able to sign as many free agents as possible once free agency started in March. So because of that, they're going to try their best to fill out the ranks with as many young players as possible, and they are deciding to trade away their 7th overall pick to the Minnesota Vikings in exchange for pick 18, pick 49, and pick 97. Now this adds 2 more draft picks to the overall Commanders draft, and this allows them to add a couple more names to the roster in order to fill out the entire 53-man roster before the preseason starts. Now, the Commanders are sitting at pick 18, and recently it was reported that the Commanders were potentially signing safeties coach out of LSU, Jake Olson, I believe his name was. Unfortunately, that fell through, and Lane Kiffin, the head coach of LSU, was able to hold on to Jake Olson and keep him in the building there at LSU. So unfortunately, he is not going to be a Commanders coach for the 2026 season. However, I thought it'd be fitting to pick a LSU player in the first round. So at pick 18, Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU, fell to us with the Washington Commanders. Now at LSU, Mansour Delane stood at 6 foot even, 190 pounds. He's originally from Silver Spring, Maryland, and this year for the Tigers, he had 45 total tackles, 28 of those being solo. He had 2 interceptions and 11 passes deflected. I think Mansour Delane is one of the top 3 cornerbacks in this year's draft. He's a solid defender on the outside, and he is a player that any team in the NFL would want to add. So there's not really much to say about Mansour Delane. He would instantly come in and be this team's most likely cornerback 1 opposite of Trey Amos, and then that would move Mikey Sainristil back into the slot where he played in college. And I think that this secondary will definitely be beefed up, and Durante Jones will have a lot of new pieces for himself to play with in this Commanders defense. So at pick 18 in round 1, I have the Commanders choosing Mansour Delane, cornerback out of LSU. Now the Commanders are sitting in round 2 at pick 49. This is another guy I think is unrealistic at this pick. However, in this mock draft, he did fall to us, and that is going to be Akeem Mesidor, the defensive end out of Miami. He stands at 6'3", 280 pounds, and this year for the Hurricanes, he had 63 total tackles, 38 of those being solo, 12.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and he was an absolute wrecking ball opposite of Ruben Bain on that Miami defensive line. The one caveat is that he is very old. I believe he's 24 or 25, and as a rookie that is pretty bad, and meaning that after 4 or 5 years after his rookie contract is up, he's going to be 29 or 30, which is a very strange thing to happen in the NFL. Obviously, most players are coming out, entering the draft at 21, 22, and this guy being 25 almost entering the draft, meaning he's very old. So that means that there's a chance that he falls to this pick. I think adding him to this Durante Jones defense will shore up this defensive line and make it probably one of the best defensive lines in all of the NFL. So at pick 49 in round 2, I have the Commanders choosing Akeem Mesidor, defensive end out of Miami. Now the Commanders are at one of their original picks in round 3 at pick 71, and I have them choosing Chris Brazzell II, wide receiver out of Tennessee. And there is a reason why this guy is one of the top receivers in this year's NFL draft. I think he's a sleeper falling to the 3rd round. However, he is definitely a weapon. that Jayden Daniels will be able to utilize in this Commanders offense. This year for the Volunteers, he had 62 total receptions for 1,017 yards, 9 touchdowns, and he averaged 16.4 yards per reception. So obviously, with his 6'5", 200-pound frame, he can get downfield fast. He's able to make contested catches. He has good hands, and he will be a speedster on the outside, opposite of Terry McLaurin, where he's able to beat his man downfield and be a weapon on the offense. So at round 3, pick 71, I have the Commanders choosing Chris Brazzell II, wide receiver out of Tennessee. Now for the final pick, the Vikings have traded to the Washington Commanders. We are sitting here at pick 97 in round 4, and I have the Commanders choosing Matt Golban, a center out of Michigan State. He stands at 6'4", 312 pounds, and he is a solid center to add to this offensive line. I think sitting behind Tyler Biadasz for a year and developing as a cornerstone for the offensive line would be one of the best things to do for the Washington Commanders. If Tyler Biadasz is subpar this season on a contract year, you can make the decision to move off of him and move on to Matt Golban, the center that has been sitting behind Tyler Biadasz for a year. The only other center that we have on the roster is Nick Allegretti, and obviously he's not a center. Usually he's able to play center, and he did for a little bit at the end of last season. However, he was awful and someone that I really do not want to rely on if Tyler Biadasz gets hurt or is moved off of after the 2026 season. So nothing much to say about Matt Golban. I think he's a solid player and a solid pickup in round 4 at pick 97. Now the Commanders in round 5 are at pick 145, and I have them adding another linebacker to this speedy linebacker group, being Jack Kelly, formerly out of BYU. He stands at 6'2", 242, and this year for the Cougars, he had 55 total tackles, 42 of those being solo, 10 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 pass deflection. I think Jack Kelly is a solid player to add to this Commanders defense. I think coming off the end, he'd be a solid linebacker coming off the edge as well on later downs, maybe finding a gap in the middle. I think he'd be a decent linebacker for Durante Jones to use, kind of be in that Andrew Van Ginkel role where he is a decent linebacker in coverage, but also could be a pass rusher. He is 242 pounds, so he has decent size on later downs to get to the quarterback, and he's shown that having 10 sacks this past season. So I think Jack Kelly at round 5, pick 145 would be a solid pickup for the Washington Commanders. So in round 6, pick 185, I have the Commanders choosing Devin Boykin, safety out of Indiana. Former national champion. He stands at 5'10", 195 pounds. And this year for the Hoosiers, he had 60 total tackles, 37 of those being solo, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and 5 passes deflected. So I think Devin Boykin is just a solid defensive back. He's a little undersized, similar build to Mikey Sandershill, but I think he'd be a solid depth piece for the Commanders in their diverse secondary that Durante Jones wants to add. He has shown that he wants to be in the action, recording 2 fumble recoveries, and I think that will be a solid player to add this year and maybe become a starter within the next year or two for the Washington Commanders at the safety position. So in round 6 at pick 185, I have the Commanders choosing Devin Boykin, safety out of Indiana. Now we're taking a couple flyers. The Commanders are sitting here at pick 207 in round 6, and I had them choosing Eric Gentry, linebacker out of USC. He stands at 6'6", 225 pounds, and he is just someone that can be all over the field. He has the size to be a solid linebacker, but he also has the height and speed to be even a decent safety in the NFL. This year for the Trojans, he had 76 total tackles, 51 of those being solo, 3 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 2 passes deflected. So I think Eric Gentry is just a versatile player that he added to this Commanders defense. Durante Jones has said in the past that he really likes versatile players, safeties that can work in coverage but also stack the box. He likes linebackers that can stack the box, get into coverage, as well as come in on the defensive line and blitz or come off the edge. So I think that adding Eric Gentry with his versatile archetype would be a solid pickup in the 6th round for the Washington Commanders. So at round 6, pick 207, the Commanders are choosing Eric Gentry, linebacker out of USC. And with the final pick for the Washington Commanders in round 7, they're sitting here at pick 223, and they are choosing defensive end Mikhail Kamara out of Indiana. He stands at 6'1", 265 pounds. I think he was a solid defensive end for the Hoosiers this year. I saw him a lot in the college football playoff. I think that he was a name that I personally watched numerous times, always in the action. This year for the Hoosiers, he had 34 total tackles, 12 of those being solo, 2 sacks, and 1 pass deflected. So obviously he's not getting to the quarterback, but I think he'd be a solid defensive end to come in on early downs, set the edge, and would just be a solid pickup in the 7th round. I don't think he's going to be a showstopper anytime soon. May just be a backup for at least the first couple years of his career with the Washington Commanders, but I think that's all we really want him to do, and especially being a guy out of Ashburn, Virginia, he'll definitely be coming home to the Washington Commanders. So at pick 223 in round 7, I have the Commanders choosing Mikhail Kamara, defensive end out of Indiana. So let me know down in the comments whether you like or dislike my mock draft for the Washington Commanders. I'm a really big fan of this. I think we're addressing a lot of needs that the Commanders have in this draft. I think they're definitely focusing more on the defense. Obviously, that was a very big need for the Washington Commanders last season, and so adding as many talented players as possible would be a top thing for the Commanders to do in this draft. So I'm a really big fan. I'm obviously going to give this an A+, because it's my mock draft, but let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on this mock draft. I know some of the players, some of the picks are not really that realistic. However, these are just more of player profiles of potential draft picks the Commanders could look into drafting come April. Thank you guys so much for watching. Before you guys leave, I would appreciate it if you guys would go down below, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to know when I post next. You guys will be notified whenever I post more Commanders content just like this. I'm not going to be here this weekend, so do not expect any videos from me. I will be back on Monday, however, so we'll be right back in the mix next Monday, and hopefully a couple more moves will be made. Maybe some more players have been cut that the Commanders could look into adding this free agency. We'll just have to see. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless, and hail to the Commanders.